So proudly we hailed.
And this was a scene a couple of hours ago, the majority of players kneeling in Buffalo, where the Denver Broncos are visiting the Bills. In fact, some NFL players have been refusing to stand during the Star-Spangled Banner in protest of the treatment of African Americans by U.S. police. Trump says they are disrespecting the flag and the country's heritage. Now, this all comes after Donald Trump's comments on Friday. He called on NFL owners to fire players who refuse to stand for the U.S. national anthem. The U.S. president going even further this morning, posting the following tweets. He said, if NFL fans refuse to go to games until players stop disrespecting our flag and country, you will see change take place fast, fire or suspend. And then Trump went on to say NFL attendance and ratings are way down. Boring games, yes, but many stay away because they love our country. League should back U.S. Well, for a closer look at the reaction to Trump's comments and how this is playing out in the world of sports, we're reaching out right now to Lindsay Gibbs in Washington. She's a sports reporter with Think Progress. Also on our panel today, Morgan Campbell. He's a sports and business reporter with the Toronto Star, and he joins us in Toronto. So Morgan, Lindsay, welcome to the two of you. Morgan, let's begin with you. We're seeing so many NFL players take a knee rather than taking a stand today in a remarkable show of unity. What's your reaction to what we've seen thus far?
One is it reveals the idea that you can't get rid of Colin Kaepernick's legacy and this fire that he sparked just by keeping him out of the NFL, because there are a lot of think about the fact that this league is 70%, at least 70% African American. There are a lot more guys who think and agree, who think like Kaepernick and agree like Kaepernick than you would know at first glance, but now you're starting to see them. So you can keep Colin Kaepernick out of the league, but you cannot fire or suspend every African American player who feels this way. And then if white guys start jumping in too, you cannot suspend everyone. So you either make room for these types of protests and for players to be human beings and express some type of concern for the communities from which they come, or you alienate 70% of your workforce. And I promise you, if you suspend or fire every single black player in the NFL, all these racists that want to see these black players under control will be just as bored with a league that's all white.
Now, Lindsay, as Morgan is suggesting here, this does begin with Colin Kaepernick. It was his protest against police brutality against African Americans in the U.S. that really began this. He's the one that first took the knee. And on Friday, Trump said players like him should be fired for doing that. What message do you think Donald Trump is sending to Black America here?
That he doesn't take anything seriously, that if they're, especially if they're successful, that they should just be quiet, have no gripes, which is ridiculous when you think about how much money Trump does and how much he complains and he gripes. But he doesn't extend that same courtesy or respect to Black Americans. We've seen in the past week, the White House or Trump directly have attacked Jamel Hill, Colin Kaepernick, and Steph Curry. And it's pretty clear what those three people have in common, that they are very powerful people who are Black in the world of sports, that are outspoken about issues of inequality, about racism, about police brutality, about systemic injustices in general. He does not like that. He clearly feels threatened, and he is lashing out in a big, scary way.
Well, you know, it's interesting, Morgan, because on social media, you certainly see people making the comment that Donald Trump has been more quick to defend the rights of neo-Nazis in Charlottesville in order for them to have freedom of speech than he is to defend the freedom of speech of African Americans playing in professional sports.
Yes, and what's amazing is that Jamel Hill became this lightning rod for all this criticism and all these protests and all this backlash from conservatives when she drew the only conclusion you can draw from the things Donald Trump says and the things Donald Trump does vis-a-vis black people is that the man is a racist and a white supremacist. Understand that he says protesting during the national anthem disrespects the flag. This is a man who, in response to protests against Confederate monuments, he says they're tearing down our monuments. Confederate monuments. Donald Trump is from New York, which was not a Confederate state. He needs a map and a history lesson. But when he says they're tearing down our monuments, what he means, he doesn't necessarily mean the South as much as he means racist. And racist get it. He's speaking to them. Just in the same way that Cam Newton, when he would talk about cooking collard greens, he's talking to his black fans. When Donald Trump says they're taking down our monuments, he's talking to his racist white fans. Because if you respect the Stars and the Stripes, then you're not going to also stand up for Robert E. Lee, who literally took up arms against the Stars and Stripes.
Now, Lindsay, we have to say, as we keep talking about this, we are hearing from NFL owners right now. A few of them did financially back the Trump campaign, but some of them, like Patriots owner Robert Kraft, are now expressing deep disappointment with Trump. Do you think we're going to see more NFL owners take this stand? Morgan was pointing out that at least 70% of the NFL, its players, are African American. Do you think we're going to see owners take a stand with players like Colin Kaepernick now?
Well, I think it's going to depend on how vocal these players are and how unified they are. Players don't have much power in the NFL. There's so many of them. A lot of them are faceless people to these owners, even though they're the ones doing the labor. They're the ones putting their body in harm and making all the money for the owners. But I think that what we've seen today is a lot of really lukewarm statements kind of against Donald Trump. There's been lots of calls for unity, a lot of vague inclinations and condemnation of divisive language, but very few owners have been incredibly direct about what is problematic about Trump's comments and what needs to change and what the athletes are actually protesting. And that's what you really need to see from the owners. And of course, as people have said, the biggest thing they can do to show that they support this, that they get what the players are protesting, is at least bring Colin Kaepernick in for a workout, at least consider having him on your team.
Well, and that's an interesting point, Morgan, because, Colin Kaepernick right now is still without a team. Many people say it's because he took this stand against police brutality. Will all of this talk now hinder or help him, do you think?
Ooh, that's a tough question, because the other half of that equation, right, is that now Colin Kaepernick has been out of the NFL for an entire offseason and part of a season. So now the other convenient excuse about Colin Kaepernick is going to be that he's out of shape, he's rusty, he's out of the NFL. But the other thing is, especially as the owners are concerned, understand that the owners don't disagree with Trump on the idea that these uppity, outspoken black people need to be brought to heel. Where they diverge from Trump is the idea that white people should boycott the NFL. Because none of this backlash from owners against Trump came until Trump said, hey, white people, don't buy tickets to NFL games, and we'll see how fast the owners fall into line. Then the owners said, whoa. Hey, wait a minute here. Let's let our players express themselves, because once you start threatening the bottom line, all of a sudden you see the owners appear, and again, as Lindsay said, make these lukewarm gestures towards supporting these players.
Mm-hmm. Well, Lindsay, you did tweet, and this is building up on your earlier point, because you did tweet today, quote, "What's happening today in the NFL is monumental, but don't let the calls for unity overshadow the calls for justice." Do you think the issue of justice, racial equality in the United States is going to get lost in all of this?
I certainly hope not. And I think that what is going to really make a difference is how this spreads to the grassroots level. Last year when Kaepernick did his protest, you saw at high schools and middle schools across the country athletes taking a stand with him, taking a knee. That sparked really important conversations about racism and about systemic injustices in these small towns. And I guarantee you that these small communities, the point didn't get lost once that conversation started. And now I think that this will reignite this. But I hope that, like I said, that people don't kind of get lost in this kumbaya part of it and in wanting to just be together. And look, Trump went really far with his statements. He called them, cuss words at the players. It's really easy to condemn that language.
Well, he called them SOBs, the way to sanitize that one.
Right, sorry, yeah. And so it's really easy to condemn that language, right? Like, that doesn't take that bold of a stance. What's really the next step is actually talking about these systems that are in place that are keeping these players and keeping the black communities and minority communities all over the country away from systems of power.
Well, it is hard for people of color, right? Because here they are, how do you become a hero in the United States as an African American and not say something about the treatment of African Americans in your country? And I do wonder, though, Morgan, as we see this debate evolve in the United States now with these professional players, is it time for the NBA Players Union, for the NFL Players Association, is it time to galvanize actually a movement to raise the issue of police brutality against African Americans?
Well, one, I think you're seeing the NFL Players Union do that right now. And we've seen earlier this week where the players and the union sent a memo to Roger Goodell saying, hey, we want the league's support on these social issues that are very near and dear to us. And you've seen the NBA come out and say as well, we will support players who want to speak out on behalf of social issues that they hold dear. And I don't know how much of it is the league itself, trying to promote activism as much as it's the league just not wanting to be blindsided by all these protests. I think the difference is, I don't know. Like last season, you saw a lot of guys not join into these protests, and it was pragmatic. It wasn't necessarily that they didn't feel strongly about this, but it was just that, well, hey, listen, I got a job to do, and I can't wind up like Colin Kaepernick. But what we've seen in recent weeks, and especially now with team owners saying, hey, Donald Trump, you got to back off this rhetoric, as more and more people feel empowered. So if this was going to happen, this would be a good time for this to happen.
Okay, well, let's leave the conversation there. We keep tracking the story, and we keep watching today's game to see how expanded this protest might become. But right now, thank you to the two of you. Lindsay Gibbs, sports reporter with Think Progress in Washington. Morgan Campbell, a sports and business reporter with the Toronto Star in our Toronto studio.